This is an M-rated game, so viewer discretion is advised. The Park. This is the first of two spooky games for this Halloween season. I was only planning on doing one, but when I saw this, it got my interest. I was assuming this was just another one of those low-budget, minimal-effort indie horror games like The Evil Inside I reviewed last year, or even Garten of Banban, which I reviewed a couple months ago. Just starting the game, I was shocked on how much effort was put into this. Look at these cutscene models! I mean, they aren't great, but they were 100 times better than I was expecting. It starts up with a woman going back into an amusement park after her son realizes that his stuffed bear is missing. She goes to the ticket booth to ask to go back inside to look for it, when she finds out her son has already ran into the park to look for it himself. So the attendant opens the spinning gate so she can go in and get him. But that begs the question, if it has to be unlocked, how did he get in? This and many other questions will sorta be answered in the end, but you kinda have to fill in the blanks yourself to actually explain anything. I don't want to spoil this, what was supposed to be a 2-hour game that I accidentally beat in an hour, but everything kind of makes sense if you get to the end. But honestly, you'll see where the story is going fairly quickly. When she gets inside the place, she finds it run down, but she never comments on it. The biggest positive that I'm going to say about this is the voice acting. I actually thought it was decent. You know what wasn't decent? The controls, pathfinding, and pretty much any sense of enjoyment. Let's start with the controls. You have to walk around this broken down amusement park, and it's so tedious to do it. They let you speed up your character if you hold down the left analog stick, but that was so uncomfortable. Usually if games do this, they use it as a toggle, not a consistent press, as it's really hard on your thumbs to do that. Even worse is the pathfinding. The park is fairly large and detailed, almost too detailed. We'll get into why in a minute, but finding your son in this dark park is a nightmare to do. Good games will give you an indication of where to go, even in subtle ways. They only start to do this about halfway through. Before that, you have to yell out for your son consistently and hope you're going the right way. It's sort of like the horror equivalent of Marco Polo. In the beginning, they actually show you him moving through the park, but then he just disappears and you just have to hear his voice, and that's useless for trying to guide the player. Later on, they have ripples that would show up in the world, which would show you the way to go when you yell for him, and that was actually helpful. And around the halfway point, they actually stopped you until you got an item or did the action they wanted you to do. So why did they wait so long to put some helpful gameplay in this? Eventually you'll find a flashlight and you'll be able to enter a funhouse, and the game changes into a haunted house simulator mixed with the gameplay of PT. It becomes a fairly on-the-rails experience, and it becomes much more intense. And when I say intense, I say that in the lightest way. I never found this scary at all, and there were only a few jump scares in this. I was very surprised when I finished the game and looked at my recording and saw it was barely over an hour. It turns out I missed a couple places in that 15-minute walk with no guidance. However, they were clearly not important since I just skipped them and I actually understood the ending just fine. Now, the level of detail in the broken down park was very impressive. They put a lot of care into this place. So much so, it was actually bugging me. So I did a little research on this. The reason it's so well done was that it was lifted from the online game, The Secret World. And I don't mean illegally, this was actually made by them. That's actually a clever way to reuse assets in a different way. It didn't work in this game because it didn't use the world in effective ways, and it made it a chore to explore. The park wasn't very good. It wants to be a spooky walking game where you never know what's going to happen, but it was more boring than scary. If the game had better controls and pathfinding, I think it could have been much better. Now, this is normally $9.99, and I think you should just skip it. It's not enjoyable, and at times it's confusing on what you need to do. The problem was they had a fairly big area to use and not enough ideas, so I would just skip it.